of adolescent girls and women and children is very close to Bank of America's heart, and our team really feels very passionate about the same. What we really found is while funding women and children, what was not happening is how do we really fund the group between 11 to 19 years. And the adolescent girls were, in our analysis with the help of Dasra, definitely not seeing the funding that it required. So there's a lot of funds going in for education. People are all trying to get the adolescent girls and the general education levels up. And then you have funds going into livelihoods at the women when they're becoming entrepreneurs. But in the age group of 11 to 19, we find that funding is not to the extent that it should come. And why is this important? And that's why she said, we are very, very passionate about this, is if you can fund a woman or a growing woman at that age, the impact it leaves is not just on the women, but what she creates in her ecosystem around, the influence she can carry, the decision making she can start making, which has an impact on transgenerational. And that's where we believe that this change is a must for India to really achieve the 56 billion growth that we all aspire for.
Thank you, Kaku. Chris, I'd like to bring you in. Chris is from an organization called Medha that looks to bring in the career services approach to public sector educational institutions. And I wanted to ask you, what does success mean for you? And why do you focus on girls?
Yeah, so I think success for us is two things. First is when we see the success of our students, and that can mean a lot of different things. Is this mic working? So I think our students take multiple paths to a career. It's not a linear finish education and immediately join the job market. It can be pursuing higher studies, or it could be trying to prepare for some government job exam. And what we try to do is help them find a path into the job market, and it can take time. So for us, the first thing is when we see our students succeeding in whatever way that might be, for us that's success. And so a good example, my co-founder Vyomkesh was here with me this week running around doing a lot of different meetings, and he got a text message from one of our very first students from 2013-14 batch, when Vyomkesh and I both used to do a lot of the training ourselves, and her name is Rita, and she was just texting him to let him know that she completed 3 years at Eureka Forbes. And we remember back when we had to fight with Eureka Forbes to even hire a young girl, because they didn't want to hire young women into their sales force, and they said that they're not willing to go out into the field and they're not willing to do anything. So for Vyomkesh and I, that's a very proud moment, that Rita has been there for 3 years, and she's now actually managing a small team. There's some months with her incentive that she makes 40,000 rupees a month. And again, that's just one path, that's Rita's path, but there's a lot of different paths. And for us, that's success. And then just quickly, I think on the second piece, for us, we really want a career counseling and mentorship approach to be taken up by the existing education system. That's why we only work with government and government-aided educational institutions. We don't have our own training centers. We work on those campuses because we want to demonstrate a model for how this can actually work with your own faculty and with your own resources that are there. So when we start getting calls from principals and vice chancellors, we've now worked with around 35 educational institutions. Half of them have been when they've called us and said, oh, I heard that you're doing some good work in Lucknow. Can you bring this model to Gorakhpur University or Sitapur or some other place? That's also success for us. So the individual success of our students, and then seeing the model slowly but surely getting adopted by the system is what makes us really happy.
Thank you, that's fantastic, and that's probably one example of many that you have. Aakash, I wanted to ask you about Quest. You use technology in a fantastic way to develop life skills. and trainers to be able to impart that the skills that you're looking to imbibe across working with multiple partners to scale up across the country. Could you talk us a little bit through your approach? Why is technology important? Why the importance to life skills in your curriculum? That'd be really helpful.
Sure, and just taking off from where Chris left, I think the idea that there are so many government organizations, government-led organizations, 13,000 ITIs, you want to add 7,000 more as per the new plan, and all of these spaces are not youth spaces, they are not youthful spaces. They lack that idea of what does a young person really want at this age, is really to be able to discover herself and not really go into labs and go into labs where there's no infrastructure. So I think when we started, we really spoke to a lot of organizations in the sector and said what will really help scale a lot of this challenge of no life skills education in the vocational training centers. And one of the thoughts was that trainers themselves don't really have the skills to deliver life skills. So a lot of effort goes into developing training programs which are one-off, but what the real need is to provide ongoing support to trainers by developing digital tools, digital content that really helps them learn concepts and helps them deliver these concepts in a meaningful way that's youth-friendly, that's youth-focused, as opposed to boring lectures in classrooms. And also I think build and shift the focus also to the learner, where they are not judging them, they are not evaluating them, but really providing the space for learners to go out and learn what they want to learn. And therefore the second piece of our approach is really providing high quality digital content to learners to learn at their own pace, at their own time, and really take that into the market, where they go out, talk to market, they go out, understand what the availability of jobs is, and come back and put it on a map, which really almost maps local jobs for other girls and other boys to access and understand what the job market is like. That's curated by the youth themselves, as well as employers who come up to us and say, these are the kind of jobs we want young girls to be in. So I think it's a combination of these different methods that really allow the learner, in this case young girls, to express themselves in a way that does not happen in traditional systems. So that's sort of in a nutshell some of our
And that's fantastic, and that ties really well to one of our research findings, where that the skills need to be market relevant. And I think that's one of the gaps that we identified through our research. And I know that all of your organizations are really focusing by keeping that at the center. On that, I wanted to bring in Srikanth, and you're from Enable India, which is very interesting because you're working on livelihoods for people with disability. And as we research the sector, we say that adolescent girls are marginalized, but when we think of those who are have some disability at the same time, it's probably double whammy on the marginalization. So could you talk a little bit to us about how you work with that group and the difference that it can make?
Sure, thanks, and my privilege to be here. So thank you all for being here. Good afternoon. And you said double. I'll probably make it 100 points. It's an exponential number. Just to put numbers, and since I know a lot of bankers are here, just some numbers. 7 to 10% of India's population is disabled. So in your state, your district, your community, whatever, multiply that by 7%, that's your number of people with disability. These are across. India has the highest rate of road accidents, 40% per year. Each road accident causes multiple disabilities. So you break a hand, you lose a limb, and you lose an eyesight. And there is nobody to help you. So you go to somebody to help you how to write without a right arm, but that person doesn't know what to do with because you've lost one eye. So these are challenges that nobody has an answer for. There is no template that I can say, you lost one eye, you lost one arm, do these 4 things, you'll get a job. It doesn't happen. So I'm actually going to weave what the other panelists have said and give you a story of a woman. Okay? Just to step back one more time, adolescent women in terms of education, for adolescent people in terms of education is probably a challenge. Again, that's what you are seeing everywhere. When you talk about adolescent women disabled, as I said, you exponentially raise it, and I'll give you an example of how that happens. So I'm referring to a lady who comes from a village called Hakapura, which is about 4.5 hours from Guwahati. Okay? It takes only 3 days from that place to get to Bangalore, to give you a perspective by train. Okay? And she's BA, Bachelor's of Arts. She's passed that in Assamese. And she used to come to Guwahati once a week or once in 10 days to attend programs on how to become better by her own initiative. And every time she comes, she's blind, completely blind. That means she has to go with her cane. She used to. But she didn't know what we call mobility. How do you go around without a cane? How do you move around without help? So every time her father or her brother or her mother would accompany her for that 4.5 hour journey up and 4.5 hour journey back. They're so poor that there was a time when she said, we didn't have 1,000 rupees for me to go up and down. So I had to come to Guwahati, spend 2 days and go back. And we couldn't do that because we didn't have the money to do it. So that's the poverty level, people spoke about socio-economic requirements. In one of those discussions, she found a trainer from Enable India who said, what are you doing? She said, I've done BA. She said, and I'm looking for a job. She knows no English. She doesn't know computers. She has no mobility. So she can't find a job. Because there are no jobs in Hakapura. So what does she do? She then goes and fights with her parents, saying, I want to go to Bangalore to study. By the way, we have a 9-month course for visually impaired to help you become employable. So mother says, Hakapura, Bangalore, 3 days, we don't even know where you are. Where will you stay? Anybody I said, we'll give you accommodation. I can't pay. You want PG accommodation, they cannot pay. So he said, okay, we'll fund it for you. Some method we will go and do and fund your stay. How will you travel? She has never traveled alone, which means she and her father have to come to Bangalore and he has to go back because obviously he's not going to stay for 9 months. Yeah. Who's going to fund the travel? He said, okay, we'll make some arrangements, you come to Bangalore. So this is barriers. Right? She can't travel by herself. So how will she travel? So she came to Bangalore. Enable India is an NGO, there's only so much of accommodation that we can do next to our office. So the accommodation that we got for her was about 10 kilometers away. Unfortunately, I don't know how many of you are here from Bangalore. It takes only 2 hours to come to this place. Bangalore traffic. So she has to change 2 buses. She doesn't know the address. She doesn't know English. She doesn't know Kannada. She knows only Assamese. And her PG roommates are Kannadigas. So she has no idea where her place of stay. She's found a place. She has no idea where her place of stay is. And the CEO on the first day of training actually went and spent 1 hour roaming around because she didn't know the place. He didn't know the place. There was only one admin person who knew some location next to one bakery. How will we go and find? We did that. And her father who came to drop her, and she knows the dates, 13th, 14th, 15th or whatever. He called her and said, "Main ghar jauna," because obviously he couldn't stay with her. He came, dropped her and said, "Look, I'm going." She said, "Go." Because as she told me yesterday, had I asked her to stay, she would have cried. Because what is my daughter going to do alone, stay, cook, eat? And she said, I have no idea. The first 1 month, I was crying in class. I was crying on the way back to my PG. I was crying in the PG. I was crying every day. And she had no idea about, she studied everything in Braille, by the way. And Braille is not used by all vision impaired, as another statistic. If you want to work in an IT company, you want to work in a bank, the first thing somebody says is, do you know computers? She doesn't know what a computer is. So, or if any of you ever have time, close your eyes and think of how you will explain computer to a vision impaired, or a computer screen to a vision impaired. It's a rectangle screen, by the way. What is a rectangle? Nobody knows. So, by the way, in schools in India, children after the 7th standard, visually impaired, are encouraged not to study maths. Because the teachers don't know how to explain velocity, direction, metrics, hexagon. These are things that teachers don't know. Okay? So she went through 9 months. So to cut a long story short, she went through 9 months of this. What does she do today? She's a trainer with us. She's actually going across the country. She's been to Akola, she's been to Aurangabad, she's been to Delhi, she's been to Chandigarh, and right now, as I speak, she's sitting in Agra. Doing what? Training bank officers to become inclusive. These are bank managers. I try to make it as short as I can. Okay? But so what do we do and what we hope to do? We increase awareness. Go to these rural areas and say, there is a job opportunity. Come. Talk to us. Go tell more people. Train. This is how you train a visually impaired. This is how you train a hearing impaired. This is how you train an autistic person. Come, talk to us. That's what we hope to do with the project that we are taking forward.
Thank you. That's a fantastic story, and again, I'm sure one among many, and we'd love to hear more, although there's short time. Before I open up to the audience for questions, one thought that I was just having, and we've been hearing through the day, is the importance of scale. The importance to really reach out to the millions and millions that actually need this kind of support that each of you was talking about. In the current environment, we have the government also providing a large push on Skill India and skilling. How does that relate to your work? I know that both Aakash and Chris spoke about working closely with government. Chris, maybe could you talk a little to how your work relates to those initiatives and how you see skill going forward?
Yeah, I think there has been a lot of talk today in general about collaborating with the government. Clearly there's a huge infrastructure that's already been set up, and many of us in the nonprofit sector realize that it doesn't make a lot of sense to replicate that system that's there, and as a result we should try to work within it to the best of our ability. It's a lot easier said than done, as other people have mentioned over the course of the day as well. I think for us it's trying to find that balance of how do you do that bottom-up systems change, one institution at a time, one principal at a time, one teacher at a time, kind of changing their minds through demonstrating, like I said, that this could work, while at the same time working from the top with certain principal secretaries and chief ministers and UGC and others who are setting policy and trying to make that change at a broad level. And again, it's really a long-term process. There's no shortcuts, I think, to that kind of systems change, especially in the education system. And to be honest, there might be a third path as well, that you don't necessarily have to work directly with that system. Maybe someone will find an innovative model, and others have found innovative models to actually avoid that. But the approach that we take is that, and I think we feel that both are required, and what we're trying to do is create some of those state-level initiatives. We're in discussions with the government of Meghalaya where they would actually pay us from the beginning, and we would run our program across all 40 of their blocks, as opposed to what we've done in UP, which has really been one institution at a time, going back to the principal secretary and saying, give us 10 more, give us 20 more, give us 30 more. And I think there was a good point on the last panel about how a lot of times these relationships between NGOs and the government are not true partnerships. It's really either you're a vendor or you're a technical advisor. And for smaller NGOs like ourselves, I think it's even more difficult because we don't necessarily have the resources and we don't necessarily have the reach to say we're going to do this in all 400 of your educational institutions starting tomorrow. So hopefully what will happen is, maybe certain administrations will be more open to this idea of piloting things and testing things. I think in the employability space, we're seeing that happen in the South. It hasn't really made its way up maybe to the North, but you see a lot of Telangana, Kerala, Karnataka, where there's state-level initiatives around employability and career services, and hopefully that will kind of change. But there's no silver bullet to that. I think it's a slow progression to try to influence that. There's a way to do this within your system.
Just one thing that I'd like to add is I think in this whole picture, the learner and the youth need to be front and center, which means, taking from a little bit from the Amul model, can you create more student groups at the institute level to really drive a lot of this bottom up as well, while we have to work with the top. I think it's equally important to trust and give that space to build these student-led groups who can use technology, who can use sort of a lifelong learning mindset to really drive this bottom up and become mentors and role models. So I think that should be a big strategy as well while we work with it.
And I think in our conversations with the bank's philanthropy committee, that was always one real point of discussion and debate. And Kaku herself would push us a lot to, as we reviewed organizations and reviewed our research findings. Is this scalable? How will this work? Is this going to create sustainable change? I think that's always been a push from your side. With that, I wanted to open up to the audience if